Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and we're going to talk about the President Donald Trump um, FBI Mar-a-Lago Mar-a-Lago raid. All right, and how the 2022 FBI raid of President Trump's Mar-a-Lago home is very damaging to your Dungeons and Dragons table. All right, let's get into this. So I listened to a guy named Indestructo Boy, and he's an up and coming D&D commentator. He commentates on Dungeons and Dragons. He commentates, yeah, and he commentates on other games. But the reality is, basically, I don't think, if you don't commentate on D&D, you really don't matter within the tabletop role playing game community. You can't really. I don't really think you can have a robust channel that doesn't talk about a robust tabletop role playing game channel without talking about Dungeons and Dragons, because Dungeons and Dragons is central to the entire industry, right? The tabletop role playing game industry. So Indestructo Boy was like, hey, he did a political he did a highly political commentary on something that was happening within the TTRPG industry, and he's like, hey, I know a lot of you out there don't want to mix politics with your Dungeons and Dragons. He goes, and he said flat out, like, those days are done. You can forget that noise, right? Like, people used to squawk it all the time. They're like, oh, keep the politics out of my game. He's 100% right. Those games are finished, right? Politics are all up in Dungeons and Dragons, right? So if you're playing Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition, actually, politics have been every single version of Dungeons and Dragons, right? Dungeons and Dragons has always been on the edge of politics, culture, and religion, right? Those are primary ingredients in the cake of Dungeons and Dragons. Like, it's there. It's always been there. Okay, and Dungeons and Dragons was less than like 5 years old before there were major political, cultural, and religious concerns with the game that the designers of the game had to address, both literally, right, quite literally and directly, by just talking about them, and indirectly in Dungeons and Dragons itself, right? So those days are done. Like, politics absolutely just hit with massive impact on your Dungeons and Dragons table, whether you like it or not. Like, and so this conversation is over about keeping politics out of D&D. Politics has never been out of D&D, and it's here as much as it ever was. So here's the problem. So basically, under the Joseph Biden's administration, the FBI raided President Donald Trump's. Of course, he's an ex-president, but I think the tradition is you just call them president. And I think if you're president, you deserve the title of president. If you're the president at any point in your life, you should be referred to as president, right? So, and that's the issue, is I fundamentally do not respect the man Donald Trump. I think he's a repugnant human being. I never voted for him, and I never will vote for him. I think he's a human monster. I don't like him in any way. But he was the U.S. president, and he was my president, right? And you know what I do respect? The role of president, right? There's no U.S. president who I'm never going to give appropriate respect to, right? And so he was a president. So President Donald Trump's home was raided by the FBI, and they took a whole bunch of documents out, right? Now, here's the problem with this. One, I don't know if you're aware of this. This is completely unprecedented in the history of the United States of America. This has never happened, right? Like, this is completely unprecedented, right? Now, I will tell you right now, this is a massive mistake. This should never have happened. And you're like, well, no, Scott, like, Donald Trump did a lot of crazy, did a lot of outlandish stuff, and he absolutely deserved to have this happen to him. And I'm like, you ain't thinking this through. Okay, here's the issue, right? One, Donald Trump was a horrible president, and now, actually, here's my take. Donald Trump was a horrible president that did a lot of good for America. He had the economy on rails, and he kept us out of World War III. And now, under President Joseph Biden, we're like, wow, wouldn't that be nice if we weren't, at the brink of if we weren't at the brink of World War III every single day, and if we didn't have inflation running across the map, and also if we weren't stacking plagues like pancakes. Wouldn't that be great? And that's what we did under his administration, right? He was an absolutely monster human who Donald Trump was a monster human being who really did a lot of good in America. Now, I think he did that not simply by just adhering to the Republican playbook. The Republican playbook puts America in the right direction. We know that now, right? And the Democrat playbook puts America on the brink of apocalypse. We know that now, right? Like, it's just the way it is, right? So the reason why this was a massive mistake on the part of the FBI and should have never happened is, here's why. If you don't respect the role of president, you cause chaos, right? And the issue is, no, the FBI should never, ever, ever raid the home of an ex-president. It just can't happen. And the reason why is every single thing that is done to one president is done in the next administration on the next president. Impeachment. It was supposed to be this rare thing that, it was like, oh, do we have this horrible president? No, impeachment is a tool that is talked about on day one of every president's administration, right? And we are so partisan that whatever happens to one president happens to every president, or has a high probability of happening to every president. And so the problem is, by raiding Donald Trump's home with FBI agents, you set up a situation where partisans are simply going to use this as a tool on every U.S. president, exactly the way no U.S. president will ever not have, almost certainly, one attempt to impeach them during their administration, right? And there's already talk about impeachment of President Joseph Biden, and I don't think that's appropriate. I don't think he should be impeached by any stretch of the imagination, right? But the reality is we now live in a world where we have so much partisanship that the worst that happens to one president is going to be used as a political tool on every president, right? And the reality is President Joseph Biden's administration and President Joe Biden knew this and allowed this to happen, and this should never have happened, right? And because the reality is, every president that comes for every person that considers being president now is going to be like, there's going to be attempts to impeach me, and the moment I get out, and the other thing is, even President Donald Trump was not this vicious, as vicious as President Joseph Biden, right? Donald Trump said, like, raised his fist in the air and chanted, lock her up, to about Hillary. And when he got into the presidency, he's like, y'all can forget that noise. That was a stump line in my campaign. I'm not locking anybody up. I'm not a monster, right? Like, he's like, I'm not going to go, try to lock up a woman who just tried to be president. That's an outrageously ridiculous thing to do. And even Donald Trump was like, no, we can't, like, there's got to be civility, right? Like, and President Joseph Biden's like, nope, raid that office, not understanding that literally raiding a president's home is now going to become a political tool used against every president. And what this means is that everybody who runs for president, right, they're going to be the most grizzled, dragon stone-hearted monsters, absolute predators. Because anybody who's like, well, I'd like to be a leader and have a civil discourse, you're like, you better be a daggers out baller fighter every step of the way, because everything is going to get pulled out on every president. We are so partisan now that we are raiding the homes of ex-presidents. Could you imagine President Carter's home being raided? Like, a peanut farm from Georgia? Right? And this is the future. It's just going to happen again and again. Now, what does this mean for you as a Dungeon Master and a Dungeons & Dragons player? Well, here's the issue. This causes chaos in America, right? And Dungeons & Dragons sits at the top of Maslow's hierarchy. It's all art, it's all literature, it's all passion, right? It's all narrative engine progress. It's all intellectual evolution progress. It's all emotional evolution progress. This ain't the, and the reality is, in order to live in an art world, right? In order to live where art matters, you can't have chaos, right? And every single president being afraid that the FBI is going to kick the door down and run up in there and seize a bunch of stuff when they're not even there, right? Like, now, I don't know if they kick the door down or whatever, but like, maybe that's, yeah. If you have to worry that the FBI is going to enter your home when you're not there and you're a president, who's going to want this? Only the most chaos dedicated, just claws out beast people are going to want this job, right? And that's on us, right? And so I'm telling you, this is going to cause utter chaos, and that's going to hurt your Dungeons and Dragons games. We need Dungeons and Dragons books to be delivered on time and done with quality, right? And in addition to that, we seriously need there to be we need stability in order to have, you know what, I'm thinking now, maybe Dungeons and Dragons is even more valuable in chaos. That's interesting. Because it is a tool and not a toy, right? But actually, I think Dungeons and Dragons with what's already out actually is more valuable in chaos. I'll say that. But the reality is, I want new books, right? And getting new books in chaos, you don't get good artists. You don't get cheap books, good books with full art and full color delivered in the midst of chaos. So I think overall, even though Dungeons and Dragons I actually think goes up in value in times of chaos, because you can still run the stuff that's already printed, and people are going to be even more responsive to a world that's crafted fairly, that has justice and has good things that happen in it, right? But overall, I think for the flow of Dungeons and Dragons product, we need stability. And this raid of President Donald Trump, I don't even support President Donald Trump. This is a massive overreach on the part of the FBI. And I really think President Joseph Biden was not considering that what happens to President Trump going forward, we're so partisan, it's going to happen to every president. And this was not a good move. As Dungeon Masters and Dungeons and Dragons players, we should be hoping for and voting for a world of stability rather than a world of chaos. So for us, this does not bode well. That's my humble opinion. What's yours? Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.